Okay, we are here to talk about tomorrow morning's full moon happening in Sagittarius, which this is one of my favorite moons of the year because I'm a Sagittarius rising and I'm super connected to Jupiter and I just love this moon. I'm also my Cancer, my sun is in Cancer, so I'm also connected to moon. So when you get this kind of combination of energies, it's like right up my alley. So the official time of the exact full moon is at 7:51 Eastern in the morning or 5:51 Mountain. I'm actually in Eastern time right now, so I'm kind of like thrown off by the time zones. But anyway, so what I would like to have you do is to have your chart handy if you have it printed out or pulled up on a screen so that you can look at it. And I'm going to kind of talk you through ways to kind of combine these energies that I'm going to be talking about with your personal chart. I wanted to start actually by having, so this is a very like buzzy moon. You can probably feel that energy already. So I thought we could maybe just start with some deep breathing together. So wherever you are, just go ahead and kind of come into connection to your felt sense of self. For me, I have to really close my eyes and kind of unhook from the energies. And I like to put my hand on my high heart and just let yourself kind of breathe and attune to your frequency, which you can really feel deep in the bones of your being and your skeleton or your central channel. And when I think about grounding, I think about more of a frequency vibration that's in tune with or harmonizing with the Earth's frequency. But if you have a practice for grounding, go ahead and do what works for you. But otherwise, you can try bringing your awareness into the frequency of your soul as it exists as a constant in the bones of your being. And then just letting yourself settle into the physical time and space where we are connecting. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and orient back to the room, the screen. It's also okay if you want to keep your eyes closed during this too, because you might feel a little more happening. Okay. So I actually pulled up a chart of the moon, which I'm going to refer to a little bit, but I just want to give you just a quick imprint of how it looks, because you can get kind of a felt sense of the astrological energies when you look at the chart, whether it's your own birth chart or whether it's the chart of another person or an event. You can just sort of tune in to how the chart looks without even knowing any of the astrology or the glyphs or anything like that. And if you notice this chart, the wheel is divided in half horizontally, and almost every single thing, except for the moon, is in this upper half of the chart, which the upper half is more of the outward, upward, public kind of energy, but it also kind of connects to like mind body too. So it's like very mental. So you can almost just feel how the buzzy energy that's happening is totally correlated with all those planets being in the upper part of the, this is the actual full moon's chart that we're looking at. So it's specific to 7:51 tomorrow morning, where all the planets will be. So that's like kind of crazy. So I first want to just invite you to pay very much attention to your own grounding practices. And it would probably be a good idea to start tomorrow morning by doing something that's personally grounding for you, even if it's just a 2-minute thing. One thing I like to do when I get up is I stop and feel my feet when I get out of bed hit the floor. Like I really feel myself kind of be in my legs and in my feet as I'm entering into the day. We travel so far and up and away when we're dreaming and on astral planes that it really helps to bring you in, especially if you're waking up as an empath, as an intuitive, to those kind of upper half of the zodiac kinds of vibrations that feel so buzzy and ungrounding. So that's just a good way to get started. And then that said, I just want to kind of just zoom back for a second and give you kind of the philosophy that I use when I'm reading charts and looking at astrological information. And I'll kind of start by saying that our own birth charts, so the moment that our soul decided to jump into a body and be born into this 3D human earth realm, there was some consciousness to that. There was sort of a choice of an energy frequency that we wanted to sort of imprint our bodies with and our minds with, so that we could have the experience of our soul being in this human form in this way in this lifetime. So the energy of your chart is like this imprint that's always with you, but then that energy of that birth chart is always in an energetic interaction with what's happening in current times, which is, we call that the transits, so the current transits of the planets, like where Mars is today in the zodiac, for an example. So we have kind of, it's like our own self orienting to all these constantly moving cosmic celestial bodies. And that's why it impacts us at such a personal, even like body-based level. Like I'm even noticing in myself, like just kind of like my heart's just a little more, I'm aware of my heart a little beating a little bit more than usual with these energies. Okay. So the first thing we're going to start with is just the basics of what a full moon is. It's when the sun is here and the moon is here and they're across from each other in the zodiac. So there's already this kind of feeling of being stretched in these sort of two different directions. So the sun is in Gemini, and that would mean that the moon is in Sagittarius. So there's this kind of axis that's happening. And then we look at what are the themes of those two constellations. And so Gemini is at this very mental level. It's about ideas and communicating and connecting with others, but kind of more in a personal way, more in a one-on-one type of way. And so the sun is shining its light on that kind of energy for any of us here on the earth right now. But at the same time, the moon is drawing our attention into the Sagittarian sort of higher mind, is how I think of Sagittarius. So it's still connected to mental energy, but it's much more about an expansive consciousness way of orienting to the mind and to ideas. So you can think of it as relating to higher learning, spirituality, philosophy, even just sort of going like taking action outward, moving up and beyond, adventure, that kind of thing too. So you're always kind of blending what the energies are and then kind of orienting yourself and the imprint of you and your birth chart to those energies. So one way that you can look at your chart is to look and see, what do I have in Gemini and what do I have in Sagittarius? And we're not going to have time to do like a full rundown of all the different planets and what it would mean, but you might be able to just get an idea. So I'm actually going to show you my birth chart really quick, just to give you an example of how you would look at this. So when you're looking at the chart, the arrow is Sagittarius, and this, I don't even know how to describe this glyph, but this is what Gemini looks like. It's if you have a different printout, it might be more like, I don't know what to call that. It's like almost a Roman numeral looking twin symbol. And so you want to kind of look at, where is that axis between those two constellations on your chart. Now mine's right in the middle because I'm a Sagittarius rising, as I mentioned earlier. So yours could be anywhere. So you just kind of want to look at like, what does your chart hold? Like, look at how my chart actually looks a whole lot like the full moon chart, which is kind of just interesting and random. Look at that. Kind of crazy. But you might kind of notice where's like the heaviness or the balance in your chart, where are the planets and points, without really needing to go super into it, just how does it feel? But then you can also look at, okay, so I'll show you my Gemini as an example, because I know I have a planet there. In Gemini, which is this piece right here, I have this little guy, which is Mercury. So I know that I have a personal planet in Gemini. So you can look and just kind of make a list of Are there any personal planets either in Gemini or in Sagittarius, or do you have a rising sign that's either of those? And maybe just jot down some notes of what's in your chart. And as we talk through it, we'll go a little bit further into that. It can be a little bit more advanced and confusing, but also super accurate and helpful if we also look at the house placement that your planets are in. So if we start with, when you're looking at your birth chart, this line here will always indicate where your houses start from 1 to 12. And it actually goes counterclockwise. You don't have to really know what that is. Don't worry about knowing what the houses are. We're just going to kind of work with the two that we're talking about today. So you want to see where we have the full moon happening. Look at the tiny number on the inside of the wheel, and it'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 12, and that's the house placement. Okay, so I'm also just going to explain again when I'm talking about your birth chart versus the current transit chart. I'll call it the transit chart. Okay, so when I talk about the transit chart, I'm talking about the moon tomorrow morning, an imprint of the sky at that exact time. And the transit chart will also have the houses showing too. So there's always kind of this, again, blending of all these different energies. And this is where the intuitive part of the astrology comes in, as you're sort of feeling into what is getting your attention most out of the different planets or houses or the things where I'm kind of drawing your attention to. So the actual transit wheel shows that we have the sun in the 12th house and the moon in the 6th house. That is going to be different probably from your birth chart. It could be the same. It depends on where your rising sign is. And so that also means that the rising sign of the moon, the transit chart for tomorrow, is in Gemini, right? And so what's interesting about that is it gives us this extra burst of Gemini energies as a part of this chart. So again, that's, you know, from the rising Gemini, all the planets being above this midline, and then that feeling of that Sagittarius taking us also to like a more expansive energy. This is just a very mental to consciousness type of upper energy that's happening right now. So what you can do, if you have specific questions about, like, if you aren't familiar with houses and you're in the live Zoom, you can type into the chat about like, what about this house? And I'll answer some of that towards the end. And otherwise, I'm just going to kind of talk about more of the energetics that are the planets that are in an interplay of exchange of energies with the moon in the transit chart. That will be the things that we're feeling come up in us potentially. And as I say that, anyone probably who's connected to me anywhere probably is an intuitive and empath. And so we usually feel the energies ahead of time. And you probably already know the energies. And so one reason that I love astrology, like me being a psychotherapist in training, in my, you know, professional training in the past, is that if you don't understand that you're just feeling energetics of the cosmos, it's so easy to feel like the energies that you're feeling are you. They're your problem or your personality or your, you know, like you're almost owning the energy. But understanding astrology lets you have this perspective, this distance where you're sort of detaching from the energy you're feeling, really tuning into your own frequency, like we did at the beginning of the Zoom, and then being able to kind of differentiate, like, whoo, this is just me in relationship to all these energies that I'm feeling. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the current cosmic aspects. We call it aspects when one planet is hitting, connecting, challenging another planet in a certain way. And that energy of those planets working together is what kind of ripples down to tiny, teeny us here on the tiny Earth. And then we feel that. So if we can understand these broad energy themes as something that's like just literally in space, and that we're taking in, then we can kind of differentiate that out from ourselves and kind of orient to how we're dealing with, coping with, feeling strength from whatever those energy combinations are. And so when I look at astrology charts, I just kind of stay in the moment in a just kind of an intuitive flow as I read it. So I actually haven't even really hardly looked at the moon chart yet. But what I see right away is that there's some a lot of squaring happening. And so in the transit chart, when we see squares, what that means is that there's really a direct and pointed conversation happening between the energies or the agendas, so to speak, of two different planets. It's like they're kind of coming into a square is like a 90-degree angle. And so they're kind of coming into this like exact position with each other to sort of point to something in us that needs to sort of have a consideration of both of those differing, usually opposing kinds of energies. And squares can be, well, they can be challenging to deal with, but they can also be a little bit confusing with how to work with the energy. So try to just tune into your intuition as I talk about this and feel into what might be there for you. So the first thing that I really notice that I want to probably, because this is something that I'm feeling for sure, is that there's a square happening between the sun and Neptune. And let's see, let me show you where that is. So the reason I'm mentioning it too is because when you look at a chart, whatever's hanging out in the top of the chart is going to be a really important energy to note, because it's almost like the whole chart is hanging from this point, if you're kind of orienting to it this way. And so this is Neptune right at the top of the chart. And Neptune is, well, it's funny here. I'm like at the ocean on vacation right now, and Neptune is the ocean. It's the everything. It's the great beyond. It's the dissolving, the merging into, like, out of human life and into the great cosmic adventure that we have when we're not in the human body. So when we are in the human body and we're connecting with Neptune energies, it can be confusing, spiritual, it can connect you more to your intuition, it can do a lot of things that are kind of up and out. But when it's squaring the sun is kind of what we're aware of now. It's kind of where the cosmos is kind of shining its spotlight for us to look. But Neptune makes it hard to do that because it's more nebulous and spread out, and it just kind of can add a sense of confusion or ungroundedness. So again, I just feel that really connecting to this buzzy ungroundedness energy that's happening. So you can kind of think about too, if you're kind of advanced enough and this isn't confusing, you can also look at where your natal Neptune is to get the sense of like what's sort of the flavor of your birth imprint of your Neptune kind of intuitive qualities in yourself, and then sort of like look and compare it to the energies that we're talking about here. If you follow astrology, you might know that Neptune has been in Pisces for a while, which is the ruler of Pisces. So there's also this kind of double whammy of that Neptunian everythingness, a little bit ungrounded and confused kind of feeling / really strong intuitive energies are supported right now too. So if you have a Neptune placement in your birth chart that really is connected strongly to you as your kind of intuitive way, then that could be a thing that you could do with this chart, is look at the strength and the like really connecting to your innate, your birth Neptune. So in order to get how to align your intuition with these energies. I hope that makes sense. You can ask me in the chat, because it's funny when I start talking about Neptune, it's like all of a sudden nothing makes sense and I forget what I'm even talking about, because that's like the influence of Neptune. So you can probably even see and feel that in me talking right now. Okay, so another square that is really well, so of course I should say this too. There's always if there's a square to the sun and it's a full or a new moon, that means that that planet is also squaring the moon because they're aligned. So you can see how there's this, square between the moon, Neptune too. The moon connects us to our deep internal experience, our emotional processing, how we take in connection and feelings from other people. So that also can be potentially with a square getting a little muddled or a little confusing. There might be more of a need for really clear and grounded communication right now with people in your life, kind of double checking that you're being understood and what you're trying to communicate. The next thing I see right away too, because I'm really feeling all this mental energy. So I'm looking at Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini, and Mercury is about the mind and how we think and how we express and how we communicate with others, how we carry information forward. And there's a square happening between Mercury and Saturn. I'm trying to show you on the chart here. So Mercury is this little guy with the little horns. And you can see also that Mercury is at home in Gemini currently. Sorry, there's a reflection there. So that actually gives us a really strong Mercury, a strong mental connection right now. But then because it's being squared by Saturn, which is over here, you see, there we go. And Saturn is, I always think of Saturn as like a paternal figure that is so invested in you, being responsible, understanding consequences, kind of like getting you back aligned with sort of a linear human path. There can be more negative connotations when it comes to Saturn, like it can feel like restriction, especially like if you're someone like me that has something like a lot of Jupiter strong in your chart and you just want to be free and go and not have any restriction or not have to stick with linear patterns, it can be hard. But when we have a square that's happening in the transit chart between Saturn and Mercury, it's basically like whatever's happening in the mind, which again is like buzzy and a lot right now. And as we already noted, is being squared by Neptune. So there's like intuitive information coming in, but also like maybe some confusion or ungroundedness. But then we have Saturn kind of going like, hey, pay attention, like be here now. This is what we're doing. And so Saturn kind of asks you, and this how I'm reading this, the combination of energies in this chart, is Saturn is actually here to be like, what is your intuition telling you? And what are you going to do about it now? But this is still in the mental Mercury energies of being able to say it, communicate it, ask for it, generate ideas that have like a real kind of grounded potential to happen. So I do feel that this is an amazing time if you can meditate with just sort of letting that intuitive, I think of it as an intuitive dump, like just kind of letting it, all that kind of source energy, that Neptunian energy just come through, and then kind of alchemizing that into how your mind works best, whether that's talking out loud or journaling or just kind of sitting and reflecting and thinking, or even just like if you have the clear cognizance of just knowing and kind of making that like bringing that into like a reality. So if you can kind of sit in some intuition meditation, just kind of letting that, allowing that to come in, then that will help you to orient in a more fluid, organic way to all of these Neptunian energies and squares that are happening that can make it harder to kind of like decipher where to focus or what to do. So the kind of theme that I'm feeling here is a higher mind connection. And so if you even think of meditating with your higher mind, I'll give you a little tool for that, that I'm thinking of, something that I do. So like we did in the beginning, kind of coming into just your own felt sense of self, breathing into your body, maybe feeling your high heart with your hand, And then maybe orienting to that deep connection to your soul frequency in your bones, like really feeling the constant of your soul as a presence, a somatic presence in your body. And then there's upper and outer chakras that you can connect with. There's one that's maybe about a foot or so above your crown chakra, so like up above your head. It's like a funnel with the point moving toward your head and the wide open part moving up and out into the cosmos, and really sort of allowing that chakra to be settled and open and spinning. You might even see some purpley or white light. It can be a little, if you feel dizzy at all doing this, it just means it's kind of open and spinning really fast, and you can almost slow it down or just let it kind of not be so wide open. We really don't need any extra intuitive opening right now with all of the Neptunian energies that are happening, and with the Sagittarius influence of this full moon. We can just sort of allow energy to come down through the funnel of that chakra. And even now you might be getting like pings and downloads and hits that are just kind of raining in, because once you tap in and connect to that, it can just be sort of like a waterfall. But you can actually ask your mind to slow that down and to help you translate that into actionable ideas or steps. And that's where Saturn is kind of connecting in with us, is it's kind of saying, like, hang on, let's actually capture the thoughts and make them human, like bring them into the human 3D realm. So that is a way that you can sit with that higher mind connection. And you can do that for as long as you want on your own, but we're going to go ahead and move on from that right now. You might even need to kind of come back into your lower body and your feet a little bit after that quick experience. Then I'm kind of following the path of Saturn from here as I build that kind of energetic recipe of what's happening. Saturn is also in a square with the current transiting true node. The true node is related to, it's like the compass of your soul's path. So to kind of zoom back and explain general astrology notes, your birth chart is like the imprint that your soul came in as, sort of the design of how you're going to be and show up in this human lifetime. But the true node is more like the directionality of, more of like the karmic path of the soul forever, but within this lifetime. And so there's like a more of like a leadership directionality kind of quality to looking at the true node in your chart. But the true node moves every 18 months ish. It's related to the elliptical of the moon and where our eclipses happen. But in the transiting chart, the true node is in Taurus, and with Saturn squaring that, that's Saturn again, that kind of like paternal, responsible, kind of like, what are you doing? Let's make this real. What's the timeline? What's the path? What's the process? When it's squaring the true node, it's kind of saying like, take all this intuitive downloading and this connection that you're getting to these Neptunian energies, and like, how are you going to make this connect or harmonize with your soul's path here? So I'm actually, as I'm going further into this, seeing this as a higher mind connection to an understanding of your soul's path. And so you might want to spend some time even in a meditation with your own birth chart and your true node at your birth, and anything else that you know about that, like the zodiac sign that it's in, you'll get the energies there. And then the house placement of your true node, that's sort of the area of life or the realm where those zodiac energies are coming in to connect you with that karmic sort of direction or task. So I hope that makes sense. It's a very spiritual, of course, Sagittarius full moon. So let's see, what else am I feeling? Oh, the other thing I did want to say that I noticed right away too, is that we have 4 planets or points really in a tight, close, it's not quite a conjunction, but they're just very much influencing each other. So we have Chiron, Mars, Jupiter, and Neptune, all in this close relationship. And 3 of those, Chiron, Mars, and Jupiter, are all in Aries. And so a couple of things I want to say here. Mars is kind of in the middle of that. And Mars is a personal planet. It connects to the body, how we feel in our bodies, how we take action, how we move about, and actually, like, it's kind of like the vehicle of our life. And so it's kind of wedged between Chiron, which is our core wound, the past life wound that we come in with to work through and heal in this lifetime. And on the other side of that is Jupiter, which is like going to just expand and magnify like anything. Like, it just wants everything to be big. So Jupiter doesn't really care if it's like good, bad, easy, hard. It doesn't really care. It just wants to be like, yeah, let's make this big. So it's kind of like the core wound is impacting the body and how we take action, how we move around, and then that's being expanded. So I don't know if you have been experiencing this, but there's been so much like health and body stuff coming up for so many people. And that can be really kind of coming from this positioning here. And what happens is, these have been in relationship, these planets have been in relationship to each other, not just tomorrow morning for the full moon. It's been ongoing, but the full moon kind of brings in this axis of paying attention to what almost the spiritual wisdom that's underlying whatever's been happening to in the body or been happening physically. So how I would work with that is connecting it back to your core wound. If you do more of these Zooms with me, I'll probably talk about this a lot because I love working with Chiron. But there's the simple way to think about Chiron. If you're kind of like, I don't know what my core wound is, there's basically 2 core wounds. And like everything kind of can boil down to these 2 things. And you might have 20 different versions of how this feels for you or happens in your life. But for the most part, you're either going to have a core wound that's around being alone, whether that's an abandonment or a over self-reliance kind of alone, or you're going to be on the other side, which is not being good enough or not being worthy. And so almost every core wound you can kind of distill down into one of those 2 things. And if you're not sure about the core wound energy, start with one of those 2 themes and just kind of feel into which one seems like the most familiar as you think about it. Most people can quickly, yeah, it's that one, they know which one. And so then you want to kind of look at whatever's been physically happening, whatever I'm challenged by in my body, or it could be someone close to you. It might not be in yourself. It could be someone that you're in a close relationship with, might be going through something. You can kind of think about if I were to zoom out and get perspective that's like really expansive and spiritual and use that Sagittarian energy to pull me up and out for that higher perspective. What is this about? How is what's happening to me physically, health-wise, or to someone I love physically, health-wise? How is that connected to their core wound around being alone or around being unworthy? And then you kind of are layering these different themes and topics to sort of come up with a story of what this moon is here to show us. But again, it's very close to that Neptune. The whole chart is hanging from that Neptune. And so it could be really confusing to figure this out. So this is the kind of moon where it's just a lot of meditating and letting that intuitive energy come in, but then alchemizing it using that Saturn energy that's squaring things to make it more real, more tangible, more workable for the purpose of that true node. Where's our soul going on in this lifetime? And to kind of keep us on the path toward that true node by paying attention to and working to heal layers of the core wound through Chiron. So I'm going to call it there. That's a lot of information. And I think that's kind of wrapping up how these energies all tie together. So again, just as a review, you can, if this is kind of a lot and too much, I would just say stay with the theme of doing some meditation to connect with your higher mind. And then using what comes in as a perspective for how you're going to understand, know, communicate any information or ideas that connect to your soul's journey in this lifetime. So that's that. And then if you're wondering the areas of life where to pay attention to, look at the house placement particularly of where you have Sagittarius in your chart. Let's see, the moon is at 23 degrees, 25 minutes of Sagittarius, if you know minutes. And that house area is where you're going to be having more of a chance to activate these energies and notice them. And if you don't know the houses, you can Google that and look up what are the themes of the different houses. I won't talk about them all here. Okay, and I know I had a specific, so anyone who is in the live Zoom and wants to type in any questions, you can do that now, but I'm going to go ahead and close out the recording, and then we have a little bit more personal conversation about any of that. And if anybody's watching the recording, you can always message me. I might not get back to you in a super timely way because I have a lot going on, but I'm always happy to try to answer some individual questions. So thank you for being here, and stay on if you are live.